Let's talk about raiding. Spent quite a bit of time now learning about the offensive and defensive sides for doing these dungeon raids. I'm going to try to share some of what I've learned here today. First, we're going to take a look at at my defender team. I'm going to be making some changes to this shortly, based on what I've learned. We've got Galore, Tasumi, Lady Nimrod, and Yokozuna. That's the current lineup. We'll make some changes soon. But each one of them there has a purpose, and we'll talk about some of that. Alright, look back at the battle log quickly. So we've only got saved results for 5 of these. Looks like at any given time they only save the last 5 or 6. It may always just be the last 5. Trying to zoom down on this list. It seems to be freezing up. Let's try it again. Alright, going down the list. We've got a lot of successful offensive battles. We do have one down here that was failed, but all the rest of these were successful. And then kind of on and off with the defense. And I've learned quite a bit about why the heroes do what they do for defenses, and we're going to talk about some of that. But let's start here with the bottom. We'll try to make some more of these videos as we go. And you can see the teams right here. So they had Masuta, Lady Nimrod, they had Willow, and Ella. Okay, so that was their team. I probably wouldn't be bringing Ella onto, or putting her on a defensive team. I talked a little bit about that in her character overview. And this guy either. We'll talk about why here in a second. So first let's go to the replay. Alright, here we go. Masuta's going to go first, and this is why I wouldn't bring him. He attacks right away and does enough damage that we just get Tasumi up to that 75%, so he's going to get a damage multiplier, which is a terrible idea. And then she automatically attacks Igorok because of the elemental difference. Alright. Now they don't have Tasumi, so I did bring my Masuta and got some good damage on everybody. And then it's okay if he dies right after that. He's done his job. There's a good amount of area damage. He took a couple of attacks, and he's gone. But that's alright. So then we do polar pounding. We're going to freeze and just destroy everybody. We talked about the awesomeness of Igorok before. And then Soul Shred finishes him off. Now, he's got that damage multiplier because of that automatic AoE. So I just generally wouldn't put Masuta, Kira on your defensive team because they can bring Tasumi. Just seeing that, I would put Tasumi on my offensive team because you know if he lives through the first round, he's going to do massive damage. Now, let's look at the next one. This is a failed defense. We'll see what happened. You can see their team there. Decent setup here. Let's take a look. Power's coming into my dungeon. And what's going to happen? So the first thing, Igorok doesn't use polar pounding. And I've been frustrated seeing that in a lot of defenses, and I just learned kind of why, or the principle behind that. We also see that Tasumi doesn't use his Mass Effect attack either. But we do have these single attack skills, and Yokozuna does use his Mass Effect skill. Alright, so Soul Shred goes off. Does a bunch of damage to everybody. Takes out Tasumi. And then since he's controlling over there, he does another Mass Effect. And we're pretty much done at this point. She's dead. I don't remember if he even lives through this part. No, he's dead. Alright, so that went quickly. Quickly and poorly. So the big thing was, I couldn't get either one of those Mass Effect spells off. And this is what I learned. I think this is key, and it wasn't clear, and it took a while to figure out, so getting a benefit hearing it here. All the area effect spells are limited. They won't be used, it looks like across the board, ever, if they're a regular damage mass effect spell. So that means Igorok, Tasumi, Pontifex. There's lots of people that have high damage first spells. But the only ones that will use them first are the first turn people. So anyone that's going first turn, which means Mazuta is one. He will use it first turn. And also Black Diamond will use her. She's first turn and she has an area effect. They will use them first turn, and you can use that to your advantage. If you know they're doing that, you can bring Tasumi. I think they tried to even out the the mechanics to make it a little bit more fair. At least that was probably the attempt. But that seems to be the way it works. Now that said, there are a few notable counterexamples, but there's a reason, I think. So Yokozuna will go, and he'll do his Mass Effect, but the damage is tiny. He's going to inflict a status effect of daze, but the damage is really low. And similarly, other players that have a Mass Effect where there's almost no damage, but there is a status effect, will also use it automatically their first turn. So those are, let's see, there's another example. Stone Fist is another good example. He will use his Mass Effect first turn. He's going to do very little multi-person damage, if any. He's going to do single-person damage, single-player, single-character damage, but he's going to do a status effect that hits a lot of people. So that seems to be the general rule, and that's an important thing to pay attention to. So I will likely, even though Igorok is awesome, he doesn't seem to be using his skill until the third round. It's possible that maybe sometimes he uses the second round. For now, I've only seen it third. We'll keep looking at some of these. So he'll probably come out for me. I don't know if that'll be worthwhile enough to keep him in. And then there may be some other options, and we'll talk about that. All right, let's look at the successful defense. Alright, so right away they brought Bloom. I would never bring Bloom as an offensive part of a dungeon raid. And then a terrible first move. So she does Sniper Shot on Tasumi. She has no other first turn characters, so she can't finish him off. There's no chance of finishing him. So she just gave him a high damage multiplier. So when he goes, it's a ×2 damage. He's definitely taking someone out. Let me take out the next player now that he's already dazed, so he can't do a whole lot of damage here. This was just a poor choice of a party to bring in here to begin with. And this battle's basically over. So now he does Soul Shred. Again, he won't do it first turn, but he will do it at this point. I think because of that damage multiplier, I will likely keep him in any given team. He can be incredibly dangerous, and that means the other team has to really pay attention to any AoE skills, any multi-person skills. Alright, let's look at the next one. Alright, another failed defense. And we'll go through this quickly because I think there are very similar reasons. They couldn't get off those AoE skills. So again, this is a good team. There's interesting things that they went with here. I wouldn't have chosen to do it this way. So he goes ahead with his Mass Effect spell right away. I would not do that. So you put Tasumi in a place where he's going to get that huge damage multiplier. And he's going to take a turn before you have a chance to do any more damage. So we get Sumo Stomp in. Again, we should be doing that every time, but there's tiny damage. And then he gets a ×1.5 multiplier. Unfortunately, he uses that on someone that has an elemental strength against him. Not a whole lot of point there. Lady Nimrod on my side, she goes against someone that has an elemental strength. Again, it's unclear when she could have attacked the Ogre King Bramble. She would have taken him out likely. Then we get polar pounding that wipes out the rest of the team. Freezes Tasumi. So it's unclear why not only could they not use the area effect spells first, but all of my characters chose poor targets. Or at least many of the times that they attacked, they chose the targets poorly. I'd like to continue to learn why that was happening. Usually when I'm in battles, the defenders at least choose to go against someone that they have an elemental strength against. Which would almost always, for Lady Nimrol, if I bring in King Bramble, she's going to take him out. So, this one's basically over. I don't think they did a particularly good job, but my defenders just chose the wrong people to attack. And I've still got to figure out, I don't think there's anything we can do about it. Hopefully they will increase the intelligence of the defenders on this, even if they do keep caps on the skills, which may make some sense. Alright, let's go back into the battle log and look at this attack. We'll replay this one. Alright, so here they have Tasumi, which makes... first we'll go over this team. So for most groups I've got I try to do all AoE, but if they have Tasumi, I swap out Masuta, and I put in, right now I've been putting in Bramble. Bramble died right away because somehow their defensive team knew what to do. Knew where to attack correctly. So if not, I would have used him first. He was first in my lineup, so that he would have buffed all of these AoE attacks, and they would have been huge damage numbers then. But luckily, they were high enough as it was. And Tasumi here does a little more damage. And we have Pontifex for the win. Just about annihilated the team now. Stonefist is a great defender, but I try to have everyone taken out before, just about dead before the slow turn comes around. Again, normally I would have Masuta Kira in there, and we'd have 4 AoE skills before the slow round. But if Tasumi's there, I'm not going to give him a buff, so that he does, even more damage. So I swapped him out with the intention to get that early buff. And that order matters. Again, I mentioned from the other offensive team that came in. So if I go to raid, we'll just look at this just for battle order. So I put Bramble first, and there's a reason for that. First meaning to the far left. Whoever you put to the far left, this discounting fast, normal, or slow. So first of all, just to recap this, the defending side always has the turn advantage. So their fast people will go before your fast people. Their normal people will go before your normal people. It goes their fast people, your fast people. Their normal, your normal. They're slow, you're slow. So he has a normal speed. Everyone in this party right now has a normal speed. So if Bramble survives through the first round, he can buff, and then his buff is like a 50% increase in attack plus something very high, 40-50% increase in the crit rate, which is huge. It may be additive or it may be multiplied on. I'm not 100% sure yet. But then that would affect Igorok's multi-person attack. It would affect Tasumi and Pontifex. So all of them, you'd have massive multi-person attacks. And the nice thing with this, if I swap him out and go with Masuta, then I've got 4 chances for a multi-person attack, and often one of the characters dies in the first round. But that's okay. And if they don't have Tasumi, then I can use Masuta, and it's great because he'll do his multi-person attack, and usually he'll be a target because he's the weakest. He's the easiest for them to kill. And so then they concentrate on him, but he's already done his damage, and I've got 3 more multi-person attacks to do. And usually that finishes off all of their team besides maybe the tank. So that seems to work really well. Another plan I'm going to try out before long, and I've talked about this a little bit in some of the character videos, is use Black Diamond here. So we kind of click on her a little bit. And Masuta, right over here. And right here, Shadow Blade. I've got to level him up first. And Swift. They're all fast, so if I find parties that are normal and slow characters, entirely made up that way, I can have 2 AoE spells, you know, one from Black Diamond and one from Masuta. And Black Diamond also has a passive buff after you ascend her once that gives a 15% increase, I believe, to skill and crit, or skill and attack, one of those two. But either way, the skill buff will be there, and so that will affect her and Masuta, which would be great. So both of them would have their AoEs that would do probably 2/3 or more damage for most of the characters, and then you can finish off at least 2 of them using the single attack players, using Shadow Blade and Willow, and then you've only got 2 left to deal with. And most of your team has some form of evasion. So somewhere between 20% on the low end, and then even much higher on the high end, as a couple of the skills for the single player, for Willow and for Shadow Blade, they both have their first skills will also buff their dodge and make it very hard to kill them. So you should only have 2 characters left to kill before you've taken any hits at all. So that's a potential team I want to try out. The hard thing is that team does not do well, really any of them, in the campaign mode. So it's a whole team of 4 characters that you've got to additionally raise up and raise all of their skills that aren't helping you at all in campaign. And I wouldn't want to have them as defenders, so they're not going to be on my defending team either, because I don't want to take the chance that they give Tasumi a huge buff and don't finish him off. So there are going to be some changes coming up soon for my defenders. Hopefully I can put out a new video. Yokozuna will likely stay, and Tasumi will likely stay, but we're going to potentially be swapping out the other 2. So check back in. Let me know what you think. Give me any comments, any tips that you have for the PvP for doing these dungeon raids, and we'll check back in later. Thanks.